Hi everyone and welcome. This video is about the demolition and fire at Carville Hall in Wallsend in 1898. I will actually do a video about the history of the hall another time, but this one is purely just about the demolition and the fire, which, as I've said before, both happened in 1898. Just prior to the demolition of Carville Hall, which had in years long before that been a single family home owned by several people over the years, but just before the demolition it had been let out as flats and several families had lived there. It was becoming less used and it was starting to no doubt look a little tired and dated and in need of some repairs. Mr. George Dixon, who was a builder, bought the property with a view to demolishing it and building houses to blend in with the other houses which by this time were already on the avenue on either side of the hall. He talks about the walls of the hall being very thick in places, and he is obviously planning to reuse some of the materials inside of the hall for the building of the new properties. One of the first things he found was an old well in the garden. He estimates it to be around 100 feet deep and says that he can actually see water at the bottom of it. The walls of the well have studded iron spikes all around them, which he believes were for people to be able to climb up and down as needed. However, neither he nor any of his workmen have tried to do this. There isn't any further information about the well from Mr. Dixon, so it's hard to know what he did with it after he found it. I do hope that it's not still secretly hidden away in somebody's garden today. Still talking about the well, locals at the time believed there had always been one hidden either beside the hall or in the gardens of the hall itself, and they had told stories of hidden treasure at the bottom. The articles I have looked at don't give much more information, so whose treasure was it that was hidden there, and why had it been hidden if it did indeed exist? Has anyone ever heard this story before? And as far as I can tell, the treasure was certainly never found. Also in the garden there had once been an old sundial, and at the time the article was written in the paper, it was said to then be at Newcastle Keep. I wonder if it is still there today. I did recently see a photo of it, but the photo itself was not a recent one, so it would be interesting to know if it was still there and why it was moved. Prior to it being moved, a story is told in one newspaper of a reporter going to look at it and meeting a man who at the time was renting a room in Carville Hall and had access to the garden. The reporter asked him if the sundial told the correct time, to which the man replied, "Why no, mister, it's wrong. It's about 300 or 400 years old now, so it won't still be right." It does seem that this report was the reason that Newcastle first found out about the sundial and then showed an interest in it themselves. Moving back to the actual demolition, it seems that Mr. Dixon was continuing well with his work, having already removed some of the variable materials from the building, and then tragedy struck. Sometime in the late morning or early afternoon on October the 14th, 1898, workmen noticed a strong smell of smoke. However, they didn't think it to be anything important, so they ignored it. But by 2:30 p.m. it became all too clear just how important that smell had been. By this time, clouds of smoke and flames were coming from the old hall, which by now had no roof, so it was quite easy to see the smoke and the flames. Mr. Dixon and his workers tried to put out the fire using buckets of water while they waited for the fire brigade to arrive. When they arrived, they set to work using hose pipes, and with the help of not just the firemen, but also Inspector Halpin and some other policemen who were now at the hall. There was plenty of water available, but the fire took some considerable time to bring under control, and by this time at least half of the hall had been gutted, with nothing more than crumbling walls remaining. It is believed that the direction of the wind at the time meant that the other half of the hall had been less damaged. It is also suggested that the old building styles had not helped to control the spread of the fire. The cause of the fire was not 100% certain. However, the workmen had had their own fire in one of the kitchen grates, and it is believed that this spread to the upper floors via the old chimney flues, and that this caused the main fire to start. It is said that a lot of sheet lead and an old staircase was destroyed by the fire. These are mentioned, I assume, as they were things Mr. Dixon was wanting to save and reuse. Sad though the fire was, no one was hurt, and the only real loss was of the valuable materials inside. The demolition continued as planned, and houses do now stand on the site where Carville Hall once stood, but it no doubt came at a higher cost than Mr. Dixon had originally planned. Carville Hall, which had once proudly stood looking out over the River Tyne, was no more. I hope you've enjoyed this short video. Do let me know if you